Welcome to Health Club with Julia. I'm your host, health coach, and registered dietitian, Julia Campagna. I'm on a mission to bridge the gap between looking your best and living your life to the fullest. After years of over dieting, struggling with disordered eating, and destroying my social life, I finally found how to reach my dream physique without sacrificing the things I love. Now I'm sharing all my strategies and education with you. We'll be talking all things health, including hormones, metabolism, and lifestyle to help you cut out the confusion and start living. So get cozy and join the club. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Health Club with Julia podcast. As always, I am so happy you are here. And before I get into this week's episode, I want to just take a second to have a little moment of silence for the lives lost in 9/11. So just a moment of silence here. That still is just one of those things that we will simply never forget. And I wanted to just take a little moment to recognize that. But for this week's episode, I want to talk about missing periods. And for all of my ladies who are missing their periods, missing their cycles, that if you didn't know, that's clearly not good. We need our period. This is mandatory, and I know I have talked to some women in the past who have not had it, and they're like, it's great, I don't have to worry about it, and they think that it's awesome because they're not getting any PMS symptoms, they're not getting cramping, they don't have to worry about, bleeding through clothes or bleeding at an event or like anything that comes along with their period. They're just like, it's great, but it's really not good. And we really need to have a regular period. It is vital for our health. And so I want to talk about why you might be missing your period and different ways that you can work to get it back. So first things first, amenorrhea is the fancy term for missing a period. It can happen for several different reasons. So number one could be postpartum. If you had just had a baby, if you're postpartum, sometimes it does take several months for that to come back. Obviously, your hormones go through a lot during pregnancy and postpartum, and it's really just kind of your body trying to regulate itself. It will come back. Very, very normal, very common to experience a loss of period. That's just part of the postpartum journey, and eventually you should get it back. So one reason is simply that you are postpartum. Second reason is that you're on birth control. So some birth controls do completely stop a bleed. Now again, keep in mind that even on birth control, even if you are having a bleed, it is not considered a period. Your bleed that you experience on birth control is a withdrawal bleed from the medication that you are taking. Birth control does stop ovulation. It stops that whole process. So your hormones don't have regular fluctuations that you would have if you were not on it. Think of your hormones as basically flatlined. There's no real ebbs and flows in your hormones, and the birth control pill does, any form of birth control. I know I also mentioned pill, but this goes for any hormonal birth control, whether that's a shot, the implant, the pill, an IUD, any hormonal birth control will stop the whole act of ovulation, and having a regular period, it stops all of that. So even a bleed on birth control is not actually a period, so you're not experiencing a period, so that could be a reason. And some birth control pills and or other, I keep saying birth control pills, any hormonal birth control that you might use, some of them can stop a period or stop a bleed, I should say, altogether. This can be due for different reasons. The amount of hormones that are in the hormonal birth control that you are using, but regardless, another reason you might have amenorrhea is because you are on birth control. The third reason is that you are newly post-birth control. So for some people coming off of any hormonal birth control, it takes the body again some time to kind of regroup, get things running again, because as I just mentioned, while you're on hormonal and birth control, things are pretty much flatlined. You don't really have these ebbs and flows like a normal person would who is not on hormonal birth control. And so your body kind of has to like reboot that whole system. And so someone who is newly post-birth control might experience amenorrhea for a short time being. Well, the length depends on the person as well, but you might experience that. Again, that should come back, but we'll talk more about the details on that. Fourthly, if you have a missing period, I mean, there are definitely several reasons why you could have amenorrhea, which I will go over pretty much all causes of amenorrhea here in a minute. That is not related to those three things. So if you are not postpartum, if you are not on hormonal birth control, and if you are not newly post-birth control, then we need to talk. That's where we need to go a little bit deeper. Those are pretty common reasons why you might not have a period or have amenorrhea. And if you're none of those things ain't looking too good. We got to talk. We got to dig a little bit deeper on this. Your period is your fifth vital sign. I have said this before. I will say it again. That just goes to show how important our menstrual cycles are for our health. It really tells us how our body is operating, how it is functioning, and if anything is off. So you have irregular periods, and you are not one of those three things, postpartum, on birth control, newly post-birth control, then something is not right. Having a regular period does mean that you're healthy. A regular, normal, healthy cycle means that, I mean, there could be other things going on, but it is a positive sign of health for your body. Whereas if you have irregular cycles in, maybe they're different lengths every cycle, if you're spotting randomly, if you have really heavy cycles, if you go 2 months without one, if you have really terrible PMS, all of these are irregular signs and things that need to be addressed. And these are signs and your body's telling you, hey, something's going on, we need to figure it out. So use your menstrual cycle as an indicator of your health. Again, there are other things that are indicators of your health, but this is a really good one to see what is the status of your health at that current moment. Now, I want to dive into more causes of amenorrhea, again, if you are not one of those three. Because one of those three, again, it's very common, it should come back. That's okay, you should still monitor that. But if you are not one of those three things that I mentioned before, and you still don't have a cycle, then again, something's off. So what are some other causes of amenorrhea if you are not one of those three things that I previously mentioned? Number one could be overtraining. Overtraining is a giant stressor on the body, and basically we want our bodies to feel safe. This means lowering stress, just basically feeling like your body is home and it's not an invader, it's not some foreign thing. Like, your body has a homeostasis and we should be reaching that homeostasis as much as we possibly can. And so overtraining gets us out of that homeostasis. It's a really big stressor on the body. It can also lead to lower body fat percentages, which I'll get to in a minute, and just overall kind of diminishing the functionality of our body. So what does it mean to overtrain? Again, this could be different for every person, but generally you want to check in, how is your sleep? How is your recovery? If those two things are really shit, then check in with your training. What is your training like? If you're training 7 days a week and you're not getting any rest, you're definitely overtraining. And some people, even if you're training 5 days a week, even 4 days a week, you could still be overtraining. So really make sure that you are not. You don't want to be doing excessive HIIT workouts where you are doing high intensity exercise every day of the week. 5, 6, 7 days of the week is a lot if you are doing anything on top of high intensity training. So if you are running every single day and lifting and like doing your other things that you enjoy, you're probably overtraining. You need to lower your volume. You need to give your body ample rest. I always suggest getting at least 1 day of an absolute rest day, like not even an active rest day, a rest day where you are maybe going for a walk. That's fine, that's pretty light, not really taxing on the body, but at most like a walk. You should not be jogging, doing the elliptical, or anything else on your rest day. You need a rest day, at least one of those, if not more. I like to have pretty much all my clients get at least 2 rest days, unless they're training for something specific, like a half marathon or a marathon or something more intense. Then they might have less rest days, but you need at least bare minimum 1 absolute rest day, if not 2. And even during your training sessions, even if you're giving yourself 2 rest days, look at the intensity of them. Are they all super high intensity? Are you doing anything else on top of your planned exercise? Really just make sure that you're checking in with yourself and not overdoing it and listening to your body. Are you sore very often? Is your recovery really bad? Are you getting sick pretty often? Is your sleep really bad? These are signs that you might be overtraining. Another sign is amenorrhea. If you're missing a cycle, you might be overtraining. So that's number 1. Another cause could just simply be low body fat percentage. So your body needs to be at a certain body fat percentage to support menstruation. If you ever think about it, right? So I feel like this is pretty common knowledge amongst women, where maybe you have a significant other, boyfriend, fiance, husband, whoever, or just simply you know a male figure and they can go on a deficit or try to lose weight and it goes really quickly for them, whereas for females it takes a little bit longer. I'm not sure if you've ever experienced that. I feel like all females have experienced that one way or another, but we need higher body fat percentage than males. Simply put, we do. Males can get pretty low body fat percentage and still be fairly healthy, whereas if women get very low body fat percentages, that's where things go awry. Number 1, we need the body fat to protect our vital organs, aka our reproductive organs that we have down there. That's why a lot of the times people, or women more specifically, fear kind of like, I don't know what to call it, lower abdominal distension, if you will, and they think that they're bloating all the time, but some women have that more than others, and it's just genetics and the makeup and your body trying to protect its vital organ, aka your reproductive organ. I mean, there's other vital organs, but that is specific to females. Obviously, men do not have the reproductive organs that, did I say that right? Males don't have the same reproductive organs that females do, and we need different body fat percentages to protect that, cushion those organs, help us out in that area. We need to support life. When we are having children, we need to support that extra life that is growing inside of us. And so yes, females are made to have more body fat percentages. Even if you did not want children ever, and that's totally fine if that is your desire, but anatomically speaking, females are made to have more body fat percentages. It's just the way that it goes. And so specifically for menstruation, you need at minimum 17% body fat, minimum. Even more so for regular cycles without any issues, you can even go up to about 22-24% body fat and feel like really healthy in that area. You need body fat for a regular menstruation, regular cycles in general, and overall our reproductive health. We just simply do. And so I hate to burst your bubble and say you can't get super, super low body fat percentage. You can, but it's going to come with a cost. And so check in with your body fat percentages. Are you trying to get super shredded and lean? You might have some consequences to deal with. And then you're going to have to eventually try to regain that menstrual cycle, regain a regular cycle, and that's going to mean putting on more body fat percentage. So again, we need at minimum 17% body fat for a regular cycle, and even more to have a very healthy, regular, normal cycle in general. So 17 is the bare minimum. I would even argue for a little bit more than that. Another reason or cause for a lack of period or amenorrhea is chronic dieting or under eating. So again, this kind of goes hand in hand with low body fat percentage. If you are severely under eating, odds are you are going to have lower body fat percentages. But also, if you are chronically dieting, meaning you're dieting all the time, you're never taking a break from dieting, and or you are also under eating for a long period of time, you are also not giving your body the fuel and the nutrients needed to run optimally. Your body needs nutrients for every single thing that it does. Me sitting here talking to you using my hand as a gesture, this is using energy, aka calories, to do, and we need those nutrients to be able to do different functions for the body. And so you really need to make sure that, one, you're fueling your body properly in terms of quantity, but also giving your body the nutrients, which is going to come from not under eating and giving your body what it needs in terms of quantity. Because if you're having higher quantity, you are giving your body more nutrients that it needs. So that's number one. It's also a stressor on the body. If you are chronically under eating, chronically dieting, it is a big stressor. Again, reminder, we want to make our body feel super safe. We want to reach this homeostasis within our body so that it runs and operates as best as it can. And so if you are chronically dieting, or if you are under eating and not feeling your body the way that you should be, it is a big stressor on the body. It is taking us away from that homeostasis. Also, side note, we have what's called the hypothalamus. This is really responsible for sending out different hormones. It is very much tied to our hormones, and under eating, chronic dieting can impact our hypothalamus, where it doesn't respond appropriately by not sending out certain hormones to the rest of our body. And so again, our body, all the functions in our body, it takes energy, and energy equals calories, to operate. And so if we are not getting enough energy, then things were going to slow down. And so one of the things could be your hypothalamus is not working as great as it once was, or as it should be, and it's not actually sending out the signal to send out certain hormones, and therefore could cut off that menstrual cycle. So that is another cause. Another cause, again, is chronic stress. Kind of already mentioned this, but it goes along with that homeostasis that I've been talking about. But chronic stress does impede certain things. If your body is so stressed all the time, it's really focused on getting out of that stressful situation, and other things kind of take the back burner. And so with chronic stress, you can have a downregulation of the hypothalamus, which I already talked about. It basically stops secreting hormones, which helps with menstruation. Obviously, we need certain hormones to work in order to menstruate, and so if your hypothalamus stops secreting certain hormones, you're not going to menstruate, aka you're going to have amenorrhea and not have a cycle. It also does downregulate the functionality of other sex hormones in the body. And so basically you're getting a mishmash of all the things just not working as they should. They're downregulated, and your body can't simply do all the things that it needs to do because it's super stressed all of the time. And another one that I want to mention, another cause of amenorrhea, or potential cause of amenorrhea, is a thyroid dysfunction. So this is a disruption in overall hormone balance. Your thyroid are made up of hormones, different thyroid hormones, T3, T4, TPO, and there's a disruption in hormone balance. This can lead to elevated prolactin levels, which is another hormone, and therefore it could lead to amenorrhea. It can also cause irregular or absent ovulation. So your thyroid is very important for many, many functions in the body. It's responsible for your metabolism. It also does directly impact your hormone health. So it can cause irregular or absent ovulation, which, if you're not ovulating, not going to really have a regular period. And it also can directly impact the hypothalamus as well. So thyroid is pretty much tied to the important functions in regards to our sex hormones, and so if that's obviously not working great, the rest of the things are not going to work great. So those are all other causes of amenorrhea that you could be experiencing if you're not one of the three. Again, those three being postpartum, on birth control, or newly post birth control. So check in with all of these things. Are you doing any of these things? Are you overtraining? Are you under eating? Are you chronically stressed? Do you have some thyroid issues or history of thyroid issues? Kind of check in with all of those things and see where you're at there. And then evaluate. Is there anything that can immediately be changed? For example, overtraining. That one is a pretty easy one to change pretty quickly. You know, you can just drop down your volume and load and frequency, and do that for a long period of time, and you should experience some positive impacts from that. But other things might take a little bit longer to help heal and get back to normal. However, it always starts with analyzing yourself, where you're at, and what you can improve. So always start there, check in on those things and see what area you can improve most right now, and then other areas you might need to dive a little bit deeper into. But after all of that, so we know now what can cause amenorrhea, how you might have it. Now, if you do have it, what the hell are you supposed to do? How do I get it back? We already kind of talked about making immediate changes, so things like overtraining, chronic dieting, trying to get out of a deficit, trying to get out of dieting. These things are things that you can pretty much implement right away, but what are some other areas to focus on to help you regain your cycle? So number one, I'm going to kind of talk about quickly because I already mentioned that, but eating enough. You need to be eating at maintenance or a little bit higher or very close to maintenance in order to have, number one, the nutrients needed to support menstruation, and number two, the body fat to support menstruation. So for any clients who come to me and they are missing their cycle, they have amenorrhea, one of the first things I do is look at their intake. What is their intake? Are they dieting? Are they under eating? Are they eating enough? We need to then get them into a place where they are eating enough to support overall menstruation. So you need to be eating enough. Quantity is very important. So is quality of your food, of course, but you need to be eating enough to support your body's function. So that is number one. Analyze, where are you at? Are you in a dieting phase right now and you're experiencing a missing period? Are you chronically dieting where you have never really stopped trying to diet? Just kind of analyze how much you're having and focus on what you can change. Ideally, you want 3 meals plus snacks as necessary as a minimum. That's a very baseline recommendation or suggestion that I have for you. But really check in. Like, are you skipping breakfast? Are you skipping lunches? Are you having 1 meal a day, 2 meals a day? Really check in, analyze, see where you're at and what you can change to improve that area. Another area to focus on is your training. Again, going to kind of go through this quickly because I already mentioned that, but you might need to lower your training intensity and volume for the time being to get your cycle back. So with a missing period, with amenorrhea, you do not want to do any HIIT high intensity exercise for the time being. Even if that's your favorite form of exercise, you do not want to be doing anything high intensity. Again, as a stressor on the body. We want to make our bodies feel super, super safe. So we want to take a step back from that high intensity training if you are doing that. And if you are not, don't add that in. And we want to focus on not only that, but overall the intensity and volume of our whole week of training. Again, make sure you are not overtraining. Make sure you have at least 1 rest day a week. And if you have amenorrhea, I would say give yourself, honestly, like 3-4 rest days for the week. Train 3 times a week. Really drop down the volume of your training. Again, this is short term. It might sound scary to you to drop down your training, and that's another conversation that we can have, is your relationship with exercise. It should not be scary, but I do get it. I do understand how for some people that might be scary and it might be a little nerve-wracking to drop down your training volume. But remember this short-term sacrifice that you are making for the long-term benefit being getting your cycle back and regular. Short-term sacrifice being dropping down your training. I would do 2-3 sessions a week of training and cut it at that, so that you are making sure that you are not overtraining, you're really lowering your stress, and you're making your body feel super, super safe. Now, the other days that you don't have training, so let's say you're doing 3 days a week of just some moderate lifting, nothing too heavy, nothing too crazy or intense. The other 4 days of the week, yes, you can go for a little walk. I wouldn't suggest going for a 2-hour walk, but you can go for a 20, 25, even 30-minute walk and just keep it really low intensity. Don't try to power walk, just simply go for a stroll. This is not only helpful for lowering your stress, but it's low impact, low intensity. It does not take your body a lot to recover from. It can actually help with recovery as well. And so yes, you can still get moving in other ways, but you should not be doing anything strenuous on those rest days. So keep that in mind. But you might really have to pull back on your training a significant amount for the short term. And again, I know that that could be scary, but it will have a big payoff for you. So check in with your training volume currently. If you do not have a cycle, and if you've been missing a cycle for a long period of time, several months, you need to be doing this. No matter how scary it sounds, you need to pull back on your training for the short time being. Third thing that you can focus on is your nervous system regulation. So this basically is a fancy term for stress management, making sure that you are lowering your stress as much as possible. And I said this, I think honestly in last week's episode. I've said this so many times. I've talked about stress so many times on this podcast, but I don't even know what I was going to say. I just totally distracted myself by that. But basically, nervous system regulation, you really want to work on stress management and do that every single day. We need to make the body feel safe. Oh, this is what I was going to say. I have mentioned this plenty of times that stress is necessary for the body. We do naturally have a stress response. We need to have a stress response for certain situation. It is vital that we do have a stress response for the body. Stress is not inherently bad, but too much stress and chronic stress is where you fall into a trap. It's where you're getting negative feedback, negative consequences from having too much stress. And so this is where we need to work on that nervous system regulation. So make sure you're incorporating nervous system regulation techniques. Now, this can be going for a walk, can be helpful. Getting out in nature in general can be helpful, as long as, again, you're not like power walking your way through it. You're just actually trying to stroll, take in your environment, listen to the sounds, get some fresh air, and just really relax during this walk. So walking can help. Some great ones as well are meditation. That is a really, really great stress technique. Journaling is a really good one as well. Same with breath work. Breath work is something that I always recommend to my clients because, one, it is super easy. You don't need any equipment. It just takes a few minutes. It's very easy. You can do it anywhere. It's very convenient. You can literally do it at work. You can even do it while you're driving. Now, I wouldn't suggest like closing your eyes or anything like that while you're driving, obviously, but you can still drive and do your breath work. It's very easy, very effective, and very convenient. So what I mean by breath work, things that I like to do is inhale for 5 to 10 seconds, hold that 5 to 10 seconds, exhale for 5 to 10 seconds, and do that repeatedly for a couple of minutes. I would say anywhere from like 3 to 5 minutes as a minimum, but as needed for yourself, depending on how overwhelmed and stressed you're feeling at the time. But that is a really, really good, effective, easy tool to use. So you got breath work, meditation, journaling, walking, yoga can be really impactful as well. Reading can be really impactful. These are all really great stress tools, and I generally like to have my clients pick, 1 to 3 things that they really enjoy doing for themselves, because some people might love to walk, some people might not. Some people might love to read, some people might not. So it really does depend on you as the person. So I would keep in mind 1 to 3 things that you really like to do. So when you are feeling overwhelmed, use those things, and even just on a daily basis, using stress work can be helpful if you are somebody who has amenorrhea. So doing that on a daily basis, like maybe you get up and do 5 minutes of journaling in the morning before work, or whatever it is, whatever that looks like for you. But I would definitely start incorporating some of those nervous system regulation techniques that I discussed. Another area of focus is make sure you're getting in enough healthy fats. Our Dietary fat is very important and pretty much like the building blocks of our hormones. And I know in the past, I think we've kind of stepped away from this now at this point, but in the past there was this really big stigma that if you eat fat, you're going to be fat. And that is so far from the truth. Really, it does matter on calories in versus calories out. And if you're eating too many calories, you're going to gain weight, whether that's all on vegetables or if you're having fats. But it doesn't matter which one. However,
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Health Club with Julia podcast. If you loved the episode, share the podcast and tag me, and subscribe so you don't miss any further episodes. If you have any questions, feel free to send me a DM. Thanks for being a part of the club. See you next time.